Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Angela Saavedra. I'm the director of the Center on the Hill. I'm going to ask everyone to be sure that they are muted and that their camera is off for the presentation. During the Q&A session afterwards, you will be able to unmute yourself and turn your camera back on in order to ask questions. So there will be some time to ask questions. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I really appreciate having everyone here online, as well as the few people that are here in Widener Hall as well. So thank you again. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you Thomas Keels and Larry Arrigale. They are two friends of mine who I wanted to come and speak for quite a while, so I'm very excited to have them here today. A little bit about them. Lawrence Arigal is a former antiques dealer and personal property appraiser. Larry was a frequent guest speaker at the Cheltenham Township Adult School and Antiques and Collectibles Seminar, as well as many Montgomery County Questers groups. So that's very exciting. And you may have remembered Thomas Keels, who is a lecturer and writer and communicator specializing in Philadelphia history. He has spoken at many different cultural and historical organizations, and he spoke with us here last January about forgotten landmarks of the Quaker City. So we're very excited to have him back today with Larry to speak to us about the golden age of retail. So thank you all so very much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Maria Angelo. As you just mentioned, my name is Tom Keels. This is Larry Arrigale. And several years ago, we wrote a book called Philadelphia's Golden Age of Retail. And today, we'd like to welcome you to Miracles on Market Street, a special holiday tour of our book. Tonight, or today, we'd like to show you how the Philadelphia retailers that once lined Market and Chestnut Streets celebrated the holidays using every trick of the trade to attract shoppers, from dancing fountains to boxing midgets. Now, by the early 1900s, Philadelphia retailers really did have to utilize every weapon in their marketing arsenals to attract customers, because the city was a mercantile mecca. With a population of 1.3 million, Philadelphia was the third largest city in America. And as the workshop of the world, its hundreds of factories offered many Philadelphians a comfortable middle-class existence. Every day, over 500,000 people poured into Center City, brought there by a network of trolleys, trains, subways, ferries, and even a few automobiles. With so many people and so much expendable income, Center City, Philadelphia, especially Market Street East, became a shopper's paradise. The stretch of Market Street between City Hall and 7th Street was nearly lined with department stores, dominated by the Big Five: John Wanamaker's at 13th Street, Snellenburg's at 11th, and Strawbridge Clothier, Gimbels, and Lit Brothers, all duking it out at the intersection of Market and 8th. Over the years, the Big Five were joined by other shorter-lived stores, including Marx Brothers, Launer's, Stern Brothers, and Frank Seder. Meanwhile, Chestnut Street, which had been known as the Ladies' Mile as early as the 1820s, remained home to the specialty stores favored by the carriage trade. For jewelry, silver, and objets d'art, there was J.E. Caldwell and Company at 902 Chestnut and Bailey, Banks Biddle at 12th and Chestnut. For fine men's clothing and furnishings, there was Jacob Reed Sons at 1424 Chestnut. Later in the century, these stores would be joined by two establishments for ladies' haute couture: the Blum Store at 1300 Chestnut and New York-based Bonwit Teller at 1700 Chestnut. On Market Street, each of the five big department stores developed a unique image and targeted specific customer segments. Founded at the outbreak of the Civil War by John Wanamaker and Nathan Brown, Wanamaker's was Philadelphia's first department store. And it was also the city's premier department store, especially after its new building, designed by Daniel H. Burnham, opened in 1911. The Wanamaker building set a standard for elegance and style, unmatched by any other American store at the time. Occupying a full city block, The entire store became a giant stage decorated with antique furniture and art and clothed in the finest Paris fashions. In this opulent setting, the dreams of a prosperous Philadelphia could be played out in grand style. A visit to the 1904 World's Fair resulted in the purchase of two objects which became longtime Wanamaker icons. The first was the 2,500-pound bronze sculpture of a majestic eagle which took up residence in the new store's 7-story Grand Court. For over a century, Meet Me at the Eagle has been a Philadelphia byword. The second purchase was a magnificent 10,000-pipe organ, which was shipped east to Philadelphia in 11 freight cars and also installed in the Grand Court. It was first played on June 22, 1911, at the exact moment that King George V was being crowned in Westminster Abbey. Both John Wanamaker and his son, Rodman, made the organ an obsession, installing new pipes and sections until, by 1930, it was the largest pipe organ in the world, with over 30,000 pipes. Organ concerts, accompanied by Leopold Stokowski and the Philadelphia Orchestra, you can see them way in the distance on the balcony below the organ, became a regular feature at Wanamaker's. After Wanamaker's came Strawbridge Clothier, still upscale, but with a slightly simpler nature reflecting its founder's Quaker beliefs. But Strawbridge Clothier could still rise to heights of elegance, especially during the semi-annual Fête de Printemps et Fête d'Automne sale, or the spring and autumn festivals. The postcard at left promotes imported French luxury goods during a 1910 Fête Internationale. The postcard at right shows the store's central vestibule decorated for the 1912 Fête d'Automne. Gimbels Brothers department store was a Midwestern transplant, moving east from Milwaukee in 1894 to occupy the corner of 9th and Market Streets. The Gimbels quickly became a Philadelphia institution. By 1900, it had taken over most of the block bordered by Market, Chestnut, 8th, and 9th Streets. At 23 acres, it called itself the largest exclusively retail store in the world. Gimbels occupied a middle ground between upscale Wanamakers and Strawbridge Clothier and the other more down-market department stores. At its jewelry counter, you could buy either a $4 rhinestone pendant or a $1,000 diamond solitaire ring. The other two stores of the Big Five, Litt's and Snellenburg's, battled for the lower share of the market. In 1890, Rachel Litt Waddell opened a millinery shop which flourished thanks to her promise to trim hats free of charge. In other words, you buy the hat and Rachel will provide the ribbons and the wax cherries and all the other trimmings. In 1893, Rachel was joined by her brothers Samuel and Jacob Litt, who built a new store at 8th and Market Streets. Over the next decade, Litt Brothers, which really should have been called Litt Sister and Brothers, expanded all the way along Market Street. And even today, you can still see the signs over the building's doors promising to trim hats free of charge. Nathan Sullenberg, a German immigrant, founded the small clothing store at 318 South Street in 1869. By 1882, he had expanded to this larger building at the intersection of 5th Street, past Young Avenue, and South Streets. Snellenburg's great Philadelphia-made clothing was so popular that he was able to make the move to Market Street in 1889. Snellenburg took over these buildings on the south side of Market between 11th and 12th Streets. These founding retailers, John Wanamaker, Justice Strawbridge and Clothier, Ellis Gimbel, not to mention Samuel and Jacob Litt and Nathan Snellenburg, were all visionaries. They understood instinctually that the best way to attract customers was to offer them something new, not just entertainment, but discovery, education, refinement, and excitement. A century before retailtainment, the marriage of retailing and entertainment became a marketing buzzword. These men had perfected the art. Now, this act of retailtainment was especially true at holiday time, particularly the Easter and Christmas seasons, which were then as now the make or break periods for retail profits.
Surprisingly, during the later half of the 19th century, when department stores were becoming a major force in local retailing, it was Easter and not Christmas that was the major shopping season. A lot of this had to do with the need to buy new clothing. An Old English proverb published in Poor Robin's Almanac goes, "At Easter let your clothes be new, or else be sure you will it rue." By the late 19th century, this had evolved into the Easter clothes shopping season. The end of Lent also meant the start of the spring social season, kicking off with the Easter parade at Rittenhouse Square. After church services, the worshipers at Holy Trinity, St. Mark's, St. James, and other posh churches would parade around the square and up and down Chestnut Street, greeting friends and showing off their spring outfits. A Rittenhouse Square fashionista might spend $50 on her Easter bonnet, roughly the same amount she would pay her cook for a month's wages. And chances were that she had bought her new chapeau along with the rest of her family's spring outfits at either a Market Street department store or a posh boutique on Chestnut Street. By this time, chromolithographic trade cards had become a staple of retailers. Stores would give the colorful cards to their mostly female customers, who usually passed them on to their children to paste into scrapbooks. At Caldwell's, even the trade cards were artistic objects. In 1880, the store celebrated Easter by distributing a series of 4 cards showing an assortment of spring flowers. These beautiful cards were printed by the Marcus Ward Company of Belfast and London. Around the same period, Caldwell's distributed this series of cards printed in France, showing either extremely small boys or extremely large Easter eggs. Other merchants like John Wanamaker also enticed Easter shoppers with trade cards, although his offerings were not as luxurious as Caldwell's. But Wanamaker excelled in decorating his stores for the holidays, especially Easter. This photograph, taken circa 1880, shows the central atrium of the Grand Depot, lavishly decorated for the spring holiday. John Wanamaker was a devout Presbyterian and a dedicated art collector who used his retail empire to share his joint passions. During the 1880s, he purchased 2 religious paintings from a then fashionable Austro-Hungarian artist named Mihaly Munkácsy, Christ Before Pilate and Golgotha, or the Crucifixion. For Christ Before Pilate alone, Wanamaker paid $110,000 in 1887, the equivalent of $2.6 million today. Before long, Wanamakers began to display the paintings in the grand court of the new store during Easter. The Easter time display of the Munkácsy paintings will remain a Wanamaker tradition for decades. This 1979 photo shows shoppers below Christ Before Pilate, while a bored little boy curls up between the talons of the Wanamaker eagle. In the 1980s, the store's corporate owners sold the paintings. Today, you have to travel to the Dairy Museum in Hungary to view them. Besides the Munkácsy paintings, Wanamaker also maintained its reputation for elaborate store displays. At Easter 1960, the Grand Court became a giant cherry orchard, while birds fluttered in a huge cage overhead. As Easter became more of a child-centered holiday, Market Street retailers found that they could simply give their Christmas displays a spring makeover. Children who had been traumatized a few months earlier by being placed on the lap of a large, bearded, boisterous man in red now found themselves confronted by an oversized, fur-covered creature with giant ears and painted eyes. In this 1950 photo, an apprehensive toddler keeps her eye on the Easter Bunny in Uncle Whip's Toyland at Gimbels. Across the street, Lipp Brothers took its popular enchanted colonial Christmas village filled it with bunnies and lambs, and renamed it the Enchanted Colonial Easter Village. You can tell it's a colonial Easter village because the bunnies and lambs are wearing tricorns and mock caps. In this 1963 photo, several determined-looking little girls appear ready to mug the villagers for their Easter baskets.
Now, after Easter, Philadelphia stores tried to fill the long gap between until Christmas by popularizing other holidays, usually with limited success. In the early 20th century, Wanamaker celebrated St. Patrick's Day with a special menu in its restaurant and by distributing packs of shamrock seeds to its customers, except the store called the holiday Shamrock Day. In 1908, a maiden lady from West Virginia named Anna Jarvis was trying to establish a national holiday to honor mothers, having lost her own 2 years before. She had little success until she enlisted John Wanamaker in her cause. On May 10, 1908, the third anniversary of the death of Anna Jarvis's mother, Wanamaker presided over a Mother's Day service in the Egyptian Hall Auditorium in his store. The room had a capacity of 5,000, but over 15,000 people tried to gain entrance. Wanamakers went on to join the official Mother's Day committee and was instrumental in having the day declared a national holiday in 1914. Over the years, many Philadelphia department stores marked Mother's Day with special events and sales. In the 1950s, Snellenburg combined its Mother's Day celebration with another popular Philadelphia custom, an annual flower show. Here, a Snellenburg's model is pushed in a wicker pushcart similar to those popular on the Atlantic City Boardwalk for over a century. In 1926, Wanamaker's commemorated Flag Day, June 14th, with its Flags of America exhibit, which traced the history of the American flag from the Royal Standard of Spain and St. George's Cross all the way up to the 48-star flag of 1926. But everyone understood that the big five stores were just marking time until late autumn and the start of the Christmas season. Now, there was a time, perhaps even within the memory of people who were watching this presentation, when the Christmas shopping season began after Thanksgiving instead of before Halloween. In the 19th century, stores relied on elaborate window displays and beautiful chromolithographic trade cards to get shoppers in a Christmas frame of mind. These two trade cards from the 1870s for Bailey, Banks and Biddle and for Wanamaker and Brown's Oak Hall are by Louis Prang, a German-American printer who created the first chromolithographic Christmas card in 1875. Even in the 1880s, John Wanamaker knew that cute kitties caught shoppers' attention. During this time, a Wanamaker's display showing the arrival of Kris Kringle at the store's Chestnut Street windows caused such traffic-blocking crowds that the police ordered Wanamaker to curtain the display. By contrast, interior store displays at the time were fairly simple. In 1907, Strawbridge Clothier displayed the Village of Patience in its toy department. The plaque explained that it had taken a very patient mechanic 7 years to carve the miniature village seen here using only one pocket knife. One house alone had more than 18,000 shingles on its roof. Many of the major stores also celebrated the holidays with acts of charity. In 1900, Gimbels saved Christmas for over 3,500 school teachers in Philadelphia. At the time, the city of Philadelphia gave school teachers pay vouchers at the start of December, which were not redeemable until January. Gimbels offered to pay 100 cents on the dollar for teachers' vouchers, allowing them to celebrate Christmas in something other than near starvation. Gimbels allocated roughly $250,000 to cash the vouchers, and they didn't even require teachers to spend their money in the stores. In November 1920, Ellis Gimbel, then the president of Gimbel Brothers, tried another experiment which changed the face of retailing forever and made a lasting contribution to American popular culture. Gimbels convinced 50 employees to give up their Thanksgiving Day morning, dress up as clowns, and hold a ragtag parade of 15 decorated cars, ending with a fireman dressed as Santa who climbed up a fire ladder into an upper story at Gimbels. Santa's final destination, of course, was Gimbel's Toyland, the heart of the store of the million Christmas gifts. This first Thanksgiving Day parade attracted little attention, but soon became a beloved part of the holiday season. By 1924, some New York store even hijacked the idea and began to hold its own parade.
By the late 1920s, the Gimbels Thanksgiving Day parade had swelled in size, encompassing dozens of floats and bands and thousands of costume performers. Soon the event was called Uncle Whip's Thanksgiving Day Parade, after the popular host of a kiddie show on the Gimbels radio station, WIP. During the 1920s, Philadelphia store's Christmas displays and merchandising became more and more elaborate, partly to compete with Gimbel's parade and partly because of the strong economy of the Roaring '20s. In an era when circus sideshows and vaudeville reviews were popular, little people were a sure draw. For Christmas 1923, Flip Brothers tempted shoppers with several famous midgets, including musical Dot, Babbo the Midget Clown, and 24-inch tall Maska, the midget contortionist. But the headliners were twin brothers Mike and Ike, the boxing midgets, who would later end up as Munchkins in The Wizard of Oz. Because really, what says peace on earth, goodwill toward men, more than a pair of little people wailing on each other? At the other end of the holiday spectrum were the magnificent decorations at Wanamaker's, which turned the entire store into a winter wonderland. In the mid-1920s, Wanamaker's Grand Court celebrated Christmas with a solemn yet distinctly Art Deco look. In the boom year of 1926, visitors to Wanamaker's toy department were regaled by this animated display, the Candy Stick Boy Band featuring Tinkle Terry on candy sticks. The band was only one attraction of Candy Stick Lane, the Christmas village at Wanamaker's that year. Store workers labored for weeks beforehand constructing the displays. In 1930, Wanamaker's issued this visitor's guide to its Christmas village, number 10 Joy Toy Street, the happiest street in the city of perhaps. This map of the city of perhaps pictures all the attractions that lurk behind Believe Gate, including the homes of Wee Willie Winky, Little Boy Blue, Old King Cole, and Peter Pan. At the center was number 10 Joy Toy Street, home of Prime Minister Santa Claus. This is the Grand Court bedecked for Christmas 1931. There may have been a depression going on, but you'd never know it. The entire court has been transformed with faux stained glass windows, inlaid paneling, garlands, and banners. The organ case has been covered over to provide a framework for the centerpiece, a copy of Raphael's Sistine Madonna. That same year, this extravagant window graced the Strawbridge Clothier store on Old York Road in Jenkintown. The Jenkintown store had only opened 2 months before, joining Strawbridge Clothier's first suburban store in Ardmore. I think it's safe to say that the then rural Jenkintown had never seen anything like this display. During the same period, Strawbridge Clothier even experimented with an early form of 3D technology in its Christmas handouts. This is what you saw on the booklet. And this is what you saw after you put on the magic red glasses that came with the booklet. As the Depression intensified, Americans relied on department stores for free entertainment, especially at the holidays. During the 1930s, visitors to Lip Brothers' toy department could meet Chief Crazy Bull, grandson of the Sitting Bull who once toured with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. A full-blooded Sioux chief Crazy Bull, also known as William Jacobs, was also a World War veteran and a national archery champion. He toured the country giving lectures and demonstrations, educating youngsters about the Native American way of life. As the economy gradually recovered from the Depression, so did store holiday displays, although they didn't recapture the giddy gaudiness of the Roaring '20s. The 1940 John Wanamaker Christmas book shows a grand court decorated with considerably more restraint than a decade earlier. The Gimbels Thanksgiving Day Parade also stayed on a fairly modest level during this period. In November 1941, less than a month before Pearl Harbor, a workman put the finishing touches on a parade float depicting Adam Gimbels' original dry goods store in Vincennes, Indiana, founded in 1842. But after World War II ended, the Gimbels parade exploded in size, complexity, and popularity. The floats became bigger and more elaborate. In 1948, a 90-foot green dragon terrified children when it emitted huge roars, which were actually recorded from a lion at the Philadelphia Zoo. Many floats represented popular characters from the movies, radio shows, and comic strips. In 1949, Dagwood, Blondie's omnivorous husband, hoisted a sandwich bigger than his head with a glazed ham on standby. His float was approaching the arcade building, later demolished for Dilworth Plaza. At this time, the parade began at North Broad Street and Montgomery Avenue, proceeded south on Broad, encircled City Hall, and headed east on Market to the Gimbels store at 8th Street. Once television became a fixture in American homes, Gimbels floats reflected the popularity of kiddie show characters. In 1950, Howdy Doody exploded out of a TV set to the delight of the peanut gallery sitting in the viewing stands in front of City Hall. 1952, as the Cold War began to heat up, Uncle Whit looked ready to thwart a Russian invasion in his bubble-top missile launcher. By this time, the parade was watched by 500,000 live spectators and by millions more on television. It's not surprising then that after saving the universe, Uncle Whit would be entitled to a little catnap. Nevertheless, needless to say, every other department store struggled to find the magic formula that would match Gimbels' Thanksgiving Day Parade in terms of publicity and goodwill. In 1952, Lick Brothers tried to beat Gimbels to the punch by holding its own parade on the Parkway. Only they held theirs on November 1st, saying that Santa was making his first appearance in the city this year. Why wait until Thanksgiving when that Johnny-come-lately would show up at Gimbels? But even with live reindeer, Bozo the Clown, and a mummers band, the parade didn't last beyond the first year. Look at how thin those crowds are compared to the mobs around City Hall in the Gimbels photos. In 1953, Santa arrived in style at Wanamaker's in a chauffeur-driven 1910 Hupmobile. But none of these substitute Santas took hold. Every Philadelphia child knew that the real Santa climbed up a fire ladder to an upper floor at Gimbels on Thanksgiving Day and would live there until Christmas Eve.
Along with its parade, Gimbels seemed to have a knack for offering the most unusual and innovative merchandise. At Christmas 1945, the store took a chance on a new toy developed by a young naval engineer named Richard James, a flexible metal coil called a slinky that could go up and down stairs by itself. Within 90 minutes, all 400 slinkies were snapped up at $1 apiece, and a toy empire was born. A few years later, Gimbels installed a Winter Wonderland ice skating rink on its 5th floor. While children were preoccupied with staying on their feet, their parents could shop for those special presents that would come from Santa. Under President Ellis Gimbel, Gimbels continued to give a substantial amount of money back to Philadelphia in the form of philanthropy. In 1958, orphans at a Catholic Charities Christmas party at the Navy Yard received a visit from St. Nick's, thanks to Gimbels, bearing bags of toys and clothing from the store. By the late 1950s, Market Street, especially the intersection of 8th and Market, where Gimbels lit and Strawbridge Clothier stood cheek to jowl, was wall-to-wall traffic in the weeks leading up to Christmas. I've read one article that claims that the term Black Friday originated in Philadelphia to refer to the day after Thanksgiving. But instead of, referring to the day when stores' profits flip from the red into the black, it actually refers to the nightmare traffic situations of the day. It was going by Philly cops because they knew it was going to be a truly black day. As television took off in the 1950s, department stores developed marketing tie-ins with popular programs. In November 1956, Lit Brothers took advantage of the new Disneyland theme park and TV show by setting up its own in-store Disneyland. Here, Disney characters helped several visitors launch a rocket ship in Tomorrowland. In 1962, Liz hit the holiday jackpot with the Enchanted Colonial Christmas Village, a walkthrough display crafted in Germany. 18 vignettes depicted Christmas in colonial Philadelphia with animated figures. Here, Miss Christmas 1966 cuts the ribbon opening the village with the president of Litz and a little visitor. After World War II, Wanamaker's Christmas decorations became a little more modern. Starting in 1946, baby boomers could zoom above the toy department on the 8th floor in this miniature red and silver monorail called the Rocket Express. The Rocket Express would remain a popular holiday feature at Wanamaker's for nearly 4 decades, from 1946 until its removal in 1984. In the 1950s, Wanamaker's placed a Christmas cathedral in the Market Street end of the Grand Court across from the organ case, transforming the court into Cathedral Square. Besides the nativity scene in the central portal, the display also featured figures of biblical disciples and prophets and stained glass windows depicting the Annunciation and the flight into Egypt. Tableaux from the Nativity were also featured in the rows of Gothic arches along the store's other 2 walls and under Gothic canopies on the display counters. In November 1955, Wanamaker's introduced its best-loved and most durable holiday tradition, the Christmas Light Show. Originally, the show consisted of a giant magic Christmas tree with over 23,000 lights that changed colors, and enchanted fountains that danced to music as 3,000 gallons of water flowed through their pipes. Over the years, a number of lighted figures were added, including snowmen, teddy bears, reindeer, ballerinas, and at one point, even a Volkswagen Beetle, all topped by Santa Claus steering the Holiday Express. Meanwhile, holiday choral concerts, accompanied by the great organ in the Grand Court, continued to be a long-standing Wanamaker's tradition. Choral and orchestral music was also popular at Strawbridge Clothier. In the early 20th century, the S&C Employee Orchestra and Chorus would give a Christmas concert at the store every morning during the holiday season. The Christmas Eve morning concert, where shoppers could sing carols along with the chorus, was extremely popular. Over time, the holiday presentations at Strawbridge Clothier became very elaborate. This 1950 photograph shows a Christmas pageant staged by members of the chorus in the store's auditorium, depicting a musical history of the Nativity. In November 1985, Strawbridge Clothier introduced the Dickens Village, a 26-scene interpretation of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. The walkthrough attraction covered 6,000 square feet and included hundreds of animated figures. A huge success, the village attracted nearly 170,000 visitors in its first 6 weeks. And many Philadelphians didn't think it was really Christmas until they saw the giant Christmas wreath go up over Strawbridge Clothier's front entrance on Market Street. Christmas displays weren't just for children. The Blum Store on Chestnut Street, seen here around 1965, was always decorated elaborately for the holidays. The original color photograph shows the store bedecked not in red and green, but in the store's signature mauve, accented with gold and teal. Just like New Yorkers on Fifth Avenue, Philadelphians used to wait anxiously to see how Chestnut and Market Street stores would be decorated during the holidays. During one holiday season in the mid-1960s, the Blum Store featured haute couture spiced with some hippie sensibilities, along with a little dollop of Gustav Klimt.
Sadly, many of Philadelphia's beloved holiday customs have disappeared over the years, along with its department stores, victims of suburban flight, changing shopping and economic patterns, and massive industry consolidation. Beginning with Snellenburg's in 1963, the rest of the Big Five stores closed their doors. Litz in 1977, Gimbels 1986, Wanamaker's in 1995, and Strawbridge's in 2006. Once, Il Porcellino, the bronze boar who became Strawbridge Clothier's symbol, presided over a bustling food court. Today, his neighbors are reporters from the Philadelphia Inquirer and Daily News, who took up residence in the vacated S&C building several years ago. Despite the disappearance of the Big Five stores, many Philadelphia holiday traditions have survived. But this year, the COVID epidemic has presented a new challenge. The oldest Thanksgiving Day parade in the country now takes place on the Parkway rather than around City Hall. And Santa Claus does a rocky sprint up the Museum of Art steps rather than climb up a stepladder to Gimbels Toyland. After the parade's corporate sponsorship passed from Gimbels to stores like Boscov's and IKEA, it is now sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts, a telling sign of how the retail scene has changed in Philadelphia. Because of the COVID crisis this year, the 2020 parade has been canceled and replaced by a televised celebration. Meanwhile, Macy's now holds court in the historic Wanamaker building. Luckily for Philadelphians, Macy's is committed to preserving some of the old store's most beloved traditions. In 1991, the Friends of the Wanamaker organ was founded to restore the magnificent organ, which had fallen into disrepair. Once the former Wanamaker's was rebranded as Macy's in 2006, corporate management began to work with and support the Friends in their campaign. Today, the 28,750 pipe organ, valued at roughly $75 million, is a National Historic Landmark. Recently, two sections of the massive organ have undergone a complete restoration, the 24-rank choir division and the 18-rank original string division. Beginning in 2008, Macy's and the Friends of the Wanamaker organ have co-sponsored several joint concerts with the organ and the Philadelphia Orchestra. They have also sponsored the annual Christmas concert, featuring Peter Richard Conte and other musical guests. Macy's has continued to sponsor that perennial favorite, the Holiday Light Show. Traditionally opening on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, the light show now features a magic Christmas tree with 34,500 LED lights in constantly changing colors. The light show continues to enchant Philadelphians of all ages, even if some of us still aren't used to Julie Andrews' mellifluous tones instead of John Facenda's growling narration. Because of COVID, the 2020 light show will be available in an online format only. As with the 6,000 square foot Dickens Village, which Macy's adopted from the former Strawbridge Clothier store in 2006. Meanwhile, new holiday traditions are springing up in Center City. Since 2008, the Comcast Center has presented a holiday spectacular in its lobby. The 2019 version featured dancers from the Pennsylvania Ballet performing the Nutcracker, animated penguins, and a sleigh ride that soars high above the city of Philadelphia. Nearby, Love Park featured a Christmas market and village. while City Hall became a winter wonderland with its own market in Dilworth Park, a giant tree, a carousel, and even a Ferris wheel. These holiday attractions will return for 2020 with appropriate social distancing and other precautions in place. Traces of Philadelphia's golden age of retail can be found in other locations, such as the Please Touch Museum in Memorial Hall in West Fairmount Park. Visitors to the Please Touch Museum will discover the Rocket Express monorail. Although now stationary, the Rocket Express still enchants small Philadelphians as much as it did when it once glided high over the toy department at Wanamaker's. For many years, the Please Touch Museum also housed the 9 surviving scenes from Lit Brothers' enchanted colonial village. More recently, the freshly refurbished residents of the colonial village have taken up residence at the American Treasure Tour Museum in suburban Oaks. So, while a lot has changed in the way that Philadelphia shops and celebrates the holidays, it's nice to see that some things have stayed the same. Thank you, and have a safe and healthy and happy holiday season.
Wonderful. Thank you both so very much. That was an excellent presentation. I wanted to open it up for questions.
Before we do, after our first couple of glitches, were you able to hear us okay?
We could hear you, but it was still breaking up. And what's so strange is that when we talk like this, it doesn't break up. But for some reason, there's just some static. I don't know if it's your mic or your connection. It's genuinely bizarre, and I'm so sorry. But we could definitely understand you. I could hear you. It just liked to be staticky. Technology was not our friend today. But it was really wonderful. So either online or in person, I'm going to go into the other room and see if anybody in there has any questions. If you're online and you have a question, please unmute your mic and feel free to ask.
Are there any pictures of the wonderful Gimbels doll display that was in a big room with window pane kinds of glass? No.
No, we didn't find. We did the research on this book starting about probably 9 years ago, and I don't recall. It's funny because I do sort of recall the display. When was it there?
Certainly in the 50s.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it was such a treat for all my girls. You know, it was all these magnificent dolls.
Right. I have a feeling it went into the 60s. And I do remember it, but we did not come across any photos of it. It would have been pretty astounding to see that. And I don't recall ever seeing any photos of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I know we have a few people who are alumni of the various stores that we talked about today. For instance, Judy Smith, who is listening in at home, used to work at the Blum Store, she was telling us before the store began. And before the show began. And these stores employed thousands, tens of thousands of Philadelphians and were a major employment source, especially in the years up until, say, the 1980s.
One interesting thing, guys, that my husband told me about, when Wanamaker's was in town and then started opening, they suggested opening stores in the suburban area. One of the presidents, and I'm not sure, I don't want to quote him because I'm not sure, but he's at an office meeting made the statement that nobody will ever go out to the suburbs. They'll all come down to Wanamaker's.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Wanamaker's was one of the later ones to do it.
Right.
Strawbridge Clothier started out really early doing it in like 1929. Wanamaker's didn't do it until, what was it, the 50s?
Probably after the post-war.
It was post-war. Yeah. And when they did it, they went with a bang. I mean, they did it all the way up into Westchester, New York, and Wanamaker's was all over the place. Yeah.
And every single store had its own version of the eagle. just like the downtown store did. And people have done like online searches on what happened to the Wanamaker Eagles that were on all the different stores.
Yeah.
They sort of
where is the original eagle?
oh, it's still there.
They can't move it.
You
It's
can
part
tell
of
how
the store.
I go down.
You can't move it. No, it's there.
You can still meet somebody at the Eagle.
Yep.
Okay. The other thing I always remember was when Ned was in kindergarten, he came home from their Christmas holidays with a little crush. And Bar used to go in the morning at 8 o'clock, and at Christmas time never got home until 10 or 11 at night. And Ned came in and said, Daddy, look at what Mrs. Martin gave me. And Bar looked at me and said, I don't want to see anything about Christmas. They're gonna open the door and clock and throw away the key. And he decided to quit.
Yes, I can see that after the holiday seasons,
Yeah.
a lot of department store employees must have felt like becoming atheists.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions?
Hello, guys. This is Renee Bess here. I don't have a question, but just a comment. I also worked at John Wanamaker's each summer, starting the summer between my graduation from high school and my graduation from Temple University. So I can thank the Wanamaker department store for bankrolling each and every textbook that I had to buy during my college career.
Thanks, Renee. And it's so nice to hear from you. I remember meeting you back in January. I hope you and yours are all keeping well.
We are keeping well. Thank you. Okay.
Breakfast with Santa was a very big deal for our family, even into the 70s. Do you know when that ended? Because that was a major production.
In which department store?
Wanamaker's. And you had to reserve in way early in the summer to get a chance to get in.
There were so many things, especially at Wanamaker's. There were so many different traditions over the years that there's probably a book somewhere that logs them all, but I don't even remember Breakfast with Santa. I mean, I grew up in South Philadelphia, and I was at Wanamaker's all the time, and I don't remember Breakfast with Santa. But
I have a funny feeling that it probably disappeared sometime in the 80s when Wanamaker's was taken over by new corporate ownership in the 1980s. From everything that we've read and speaking to former employees, the store changed dramatically. And a lot of it became very cost focused, and a lot of the old traditions sort of went out the window. That was when they sold the big paintings by Munchesi to the museum in Hungary. I have a feeling it probably changed then. Luckily, they didn't abandon the most popular ones like the light show, but many other traditions began to disappear around that time.
Yeah, once the toy department went away, that was probably the biggest thing. When the new corporate ownerships, they started shrinking the store down. So now it's only 3 stories out of the original 8, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. When did the toy department end? Do you remember? Do you know?
Oh, no. Probably around the time that the monorail was removed.
Yeah, the Breakfast with Santa, the kids went up to the monorail, and then all this happened to keep the store open.
Probably disappeared when the monorail disappeared.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Which again was 1984, when the corporate owners were looking for ways that they could maximize revenues.
Yeah. And I mean, there were departments. There was an antiques department. There was a wonderful, the stamp department was fantastic. I spent so many days there during summer vacations at the stamp department.
Well, I want you to know that the real Santa was at Wanamaker's. In the 30s and 40s, that's what my family told me, and all the rest were helpers.
We're getting into a big theological dispute here, and I don't want to opened a big can of worms here. But
I'm pretty sure that all of my Santa photos from the 1960s were probably at Gimbels, actually. But
Oh, well, you only had a helper then.
well, whoever it was, I was pretty happy with them. My pictures from Santa are always very jubilant. I just love Santa. So helper, fraud or not, Anyway.
Anything else? Any other questions, or would anyone like to share any other reminiscences about shopping or working at any of these stores?
Yeah, my name's Joe Luby. One of the things we used to do with our children would go in and have dinner and see the light show. But also we would send our kids into the Secret Santa gift shop, pin money to them, and they would go in and buy gifts, and they would come out wrapped for the family. And they still remember doing
I remember hearing about that. I never did that. My mom never sent me in there, but
well, how about the tea room? That was really wonderful.
Well, you'll see pictures of the tea room in the book, Judy. Yeah,
oh, good.
We didn't really get into the tea room in this presentation, but it's in the book.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to mention is I worked with a woman who worked at Wanamaker's in an early age, and she talked about the fact that Wanamaker's had a band that she was involved in, and also they had a camp down in Island Heights that they would send these folks, and she said she would have never gotten away and done a lot of those things without having been
at the camp.
Wanamaker's.
Yeah.
When you look at the early history of these department stores, the big ones like Wanamaker's, Gimbels, Strawbridge, and Clothier's, you are really amazed by the variety of services. They realized that their employees were not earning a huge amount of money, but maintaining them was very important. And so the store, if you look at old aerial photos of Wanamaker's, you will see athletic tracks and a ring on the top of the store. They had sports teams. There was a department store sports league that played baseball and football and basketball with each other. You could arrange for a low interest loan on a house. You could take out a loan to send your kid to college. Some of them offered health insurance. The variety of benefits in order to maintain a satisfied workforce is truly remarkable. And when you talk to people from this period, the degree of loyalty to their store, they were a family to an extent that you really don't see in many workplaces nowadays.
Well, there's a wonderful book on John Wanamaker, and he obviously was a wonderful person.
There are many books on him.
Yeah.
Which book are you referring to?
Oh gosh, it's in the other room. I don't want to take up the time, but
no. You're probably thinking of maybe Bill Zolker's book, Merchant Prince, John Wanamaker, The Merchant Prince. That was the last one that came out in the 1990s.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the one you're thinking about. And Bill Zolker is wonderful. Hopefully he's still with us. But he was very helpful in writing our book as well.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, good. We'll get it soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you both so very much for being with us.
Our pleasure. We loved it. Yeah.
Really, really appreciate you doing this. This was a wonderful, wonderful talk. Can you remind us again where to get the book?
Yes, the book is Philadelphia's Golden Age of Retail. He said, desperately trying to pull it back up on the screen. And it is available on Amazon. And at any rate, makes a great Christmas gift. What can I say? It really
does, yeah. Don't get it on eBay, because the eBay prices are way out of line. I mean, I've seen copies that going for over $50.
Yes, evidently we're
yeah, and they're not even signed. Yeah.
The nerve.
I know.
Well, great. Well, thank you. I'll definitely be adding that to my coffee table. Thank you all so very much for joining us online, for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Have a great
You're
rest
welcome. Everybody have a safe and happy holiday season.
And you too.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye, everybody.